Apples of Gold presents a radio adaptation of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle novel, The Hound of the Baskervilles.
I was there within the hour. I checked all the facts that were mentioned at the inquest, his footprints, the absence of physical injury, the facial contortion. He said that there were no traces on the ground around the body. He didn't see any. I did. About 20 yards from the body. Other footprints.
A man's or a woman's?
Mr. Holmes. They were the footprints of a gigantic hound.
And so began perhaps the most terrifying of all the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. My name is Watson, Dr. John Watson, and it was my privilege to share them. But if ever I felt it was a doubtful privilege, it was this, our encounter with the Hound of the Baskervilles. I will tell you what happened. My friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, was usually very late in the mornings, save on those not too infrequent occasions when he stayed up all night. One morning, it was in the autumn of 1889. He was seated at the breakfast table in his dressing gown. I was standing on the hearth rug looking at a stick which a visitor had left at our Baker Street rooms the night before. It was a fine, thick piece of wood, bulbous-headed, of the sort which is known as a Penang lawyer.
Tell me, Watson, what do you make of that stick? We missed the owner yesterday and have no idea of his errand, so this accidental souvenir assumes some importance. Let me hear you reconstruct the man by an examination of it. Just follow my methods.
I think he's an elderly medical man.
Why?
Because of the inscription on the silver band. To James Mortimer, MRCS, from his friends of the CCH, 1884.
Excellent. What else?
I'd say he's a country practitioner who does a great deal of his visiting on foot.
Oh, why is that?
Well, because the thick iron ferrule has been worn down, and the whole stick has been terribly knocked about. I can't see a town doctor carrying it.
Perfectly sound. And what about the Friends of the CCH?
I think that's the, something hunt, or whatever the locals hunt's called. He's probably helped them professionally, and they gave him this stick in return.
Really, Watson, you excel yourself. Most stimulating.
Oh, Holmes.
And now that I've finished breakfast, I'd like to have a look at that stick myself. Just hand me over my convex lens, will you?
Oh, there you are.
Thank you. Now, let me see. I'm afraid, my dear Watson, that most of your conclusions are erroneous.
What?
Not that you're entirely wrong. The man is certainly a country practitioner.
Ah, then I was right.
To that extent.
Well, where did I go wrong, then?
Well, for one thing, I would suggest that a presentation to a doctor is more likely to come from a hospital than from a hunt. And when the initials CC are placed before that hospital, the words Charing Cross naturally suggest themselves.
You may be right.
The probability lies in that direction. And since the presentation was made but 5 years ago, there emerges a young fellow under 30, amiable, absent-minded, and with a favorite dog. Something between a terrier and a mastiff.
Now, just a minute, Holmes. How do you know he's amiable, absent-minded, and has a dog?
Well, it's my experience that only amiable men receive testimonials, and he was absent-minded enough to leave his stick here yesterday.
True, but, well, what about the dog?
Look at the teeth marks on the stick. See? As I say, they're too broad for a terrier, not broad enough for a mastiff. Now, let me take it over to the window light. Oh, yes. By Jove, it's a curly-haired spaniel.
My dear fellow, how can you possibly be sure of that?
Simply by looking out of the window. Dog and owner are on our very doorstep. He's a tall, thin man, a bit bent in the shoulders, and his frock coat's a bit worn. Come in.
Ah, you have my stick here. I'm so very glad. I wasn't sure whether I'd left it here or in the shipping office. I wouldn't lose that stick for the world.
A presentation, I see.
Yes, sir.
From Charing Cross Hospital.
Yes.
Ah, then we're not so far wrong, Dr.
Mortimer. James Mortimer.
Just so.
I'm now in practice in Devon at Grimpen on Dartmoor. I came to you because I'm confused with the most serious and extraordinary problem. I have in my pocket an old manuscript.
I observed it as you entered the room.
It's a family document. It was committed to my care by Sir Charles Baskerville, who died some 3 months ago in Devon.
Oh, yes, I remember reading about that.
Mr. Holmes, until his sudden and tragic death, Sir Charles was a patient and also my personal friend. He was a strong-minded, shrewd, practical, and as unimaginative as I am. But he took this document very seriously and was prepared for just such an end as eventually did overtake him.
What's in the document?
Well, it's a certain legend that runs in the Baskerville family. It tells the story of the death of Hugo Baskerville, who held the manor of Baskerville at the time of the Great Rebellion. Hugo, Mr. Holmes, was a wild, profane, and godless man. His name was a byword in the West. It happened that he fell in love with the daughter of yeoman who held lands near the Baskerville estate. This girl avoided him, but one Michaelmas he stole down upon the farm with about 5 or 6 wicked companions, carried her off to his hall. They put her in an upper chamber while Hugo and his friends sat down to a long carousel. The girl, in the stress of her fear, climbed down the ivy that still covers the south wall and set off homeward across the moor.
Go on.
Some time later, Hugo went upstairs to see his captive and found her gone. And here I think I must quote the manuscript itself. Then it would seem he became as one that hath a devil, for rushing downwards into the dining hall, he sprang upon the table, flagons and trenchers flying before him, and he cried aloud before all the company that he would that very night render his body and soul to the powers of evil if he might but overtake the wench. And with that, Mr. Holmes, this wicked man ran from the house and had his groom saddle his horse and unkennel the pack.
You mean he put the hounds on her?
He did. He gave them the girl's handkerchief and set off full cry into the moonlight over the moor.
But good heavens, didn't the others try to stop him?
They just seemed to have stood there, stupefied. But then some sense came back into their minds, and they rode off after him. They found Hugo Baskerville's black mare dabbled with froth and riderless. They found the hounds whimpering in a cluster at the head of a dip. 3 of the boldest riders, or maybe the most drunken, rode down into the dip. And there they found the unhappy girl lying dead, with fear and fatigue.
Oh, poor girl.
But it wasn't that raised the hair on their heads. Let me quote the actual words. It was standing over Hugo and plucked at his throat. There stood a great foul thing, a black beast, shaped like a hound, yet larger than any hound that mortal eye had rested upon. And even as they looked, the thing tore out the throat of Hugo Baskerville. Then, as it turned its blazing eyes and gripping jaws upon them, the 3 shrieked with fear and rode for dear life, still screaming, across the moor. One, it is said, died that very night of what he had seen, and the other twain were but broken men for the rest of their days. The writer, by counseling his descendants never to cross the moor in those dark hours, as he puts it, when the powers of evil are exalted.
Great heavens!
Now we come to something a little more recent, the death of Sir Charles Baskerville in June of this year. Let me say at once that Sir Charles was a man of very different mold from his infamous ancestor. Many people had good reason to bewail his untimely end.
It was sudden, you say?
Indeed, yes. Not that his health had been good for some time. There was an affliction of the heart showing itself in breathlessness and nervous depression.
Was he a married man, Dr. Mortimer?
He was a widower. He was childless, lived very simply. The indoor servants at Baskerville Hall consisted of a couple named Barrymore, who acted as butler and his housekeeper. They corroborated my evidence at the inquest about his health.
What happened?
Well, the facts are quite simple. Every night before he went to bed, Sir Charles used to walk down the famous yew alley of Baskerville Hall. On the 4th of June, he declares his intention of starting for London the next day and told Barrymore to pack for him. That night, he went for his walk as usual and never returned.
Who raised the alarm?
Barrymore, the butler. He found the hall door open, became alarmed, and went out with a lantern. Halfway down Yew Alley, there's a gate that leads out onto the moor. Sir Charles's footprints led there, and there was evidence that he had stood there for a while. But then the footprints continued and appeared to be those of a man.
Running for his life? Where did they lead?
Well, to the far end of the alley, and there the body was found.
Any signs of violence?
No, but the face was incredibly distorted. At first, I couldn't believe that it was actually Sir Charles.
How do you account for the distortion?
Well, it's a symptom that's not unusual in the case of death from cardiac exhaustion.
Yes, that's true enough.
The post-mortem showed a long-standing organic disease, and the coroner returned a verdict in accordance. Those are the public facts.
I see. Then can we now have the private ones?
He would never go out on the moor at night. One evening about 3 weeks before he died, I drove up to his house. He was standing at his door. Just as I was getting out of my gig, I noticed his eyes fixed themselves on something over my shoulder and stare with an expression of horror. He was so excited and alarmed that I had to go down to the spot and look round. There was nothing there. I had to stand with him all the evening, and that's when I suggested he should go to London. Mr. Stapleton, a mutual friend, was also very worried about him, and he agreed with me. And then, at that last instant, came this terrible catastrophe.
How soon did you see the body?
Well, they had to send a message over. I was there within the hour. I checked all the facts that were mentioned at the inquest. His footprints, the absence of physical injury, the facial contortion. But Barrymore made one inaccurate statement in his evidence.
Oh, what was that?
He said that there were no traces on the ground around the body. He didn't see any. I did. About 20 feet from the body. Other footprints.
A man's or a woman's?
Mr. Holmes. They were the footprints of a gigantic hound.
Great heavens!
There are sheepdogs on the moor.
No doubt, but this was no sheepdog. The rain the next day washed away the prints.
What was this alley like?
There are 2 lines of old yew hedge, impenetrable, 12 feet high.
Penetrated at one point by a wicket gate, you say?
Yes, it leads onto the moor.
Are there any other openings?
None.
Was this gate closed?
Closed and padlocked.
How high is it?
About 4 feet.
So anyone could have gotten over it?
Yes.
Dr. Mortimer, what made you say that Sir Charles had waited by the gate?
Cigar ash. He dropped it there twice.
Excellent. Watson, this is a colleague after my own heart.
Mr. Holmes, several people have seen a creature on the moor. Something that couldn't be any animal known to science. A huge creature. Luminous. Spectral.
And you, a trained man of science, believe it to be supernatural?
I don't know what to believe.
Well, surely the footprints were material.
The original hound was material enough to tear out a man's throat, but it was diabolical as well.
Dr. Mortimer, if you hold these views, why have you come to consult me? You tell me in the same breath that it's useless to investigate Sir Charles's death, and yet you desire me to do it.
I did not say I desired you to do it.
Oh? Then how can I assist you?
By telling me what to do about Sir Henry Baskerville.
Sir Henry?
Is this the heir?
He's Sir Charles's nephew, the son of his younger brother. He's been traced in Canada, been farming there. He arrives at Waterloo in, let me see, just under an hour and a quarter.
Are there any other claimants?
No. The only other kinsman we have been able to trace was Roger Baskerville, the youngest of the 3 brothers, of whom poor Sir Charles was the eldest. He was the black sheep of the family, the very image, so they say, of old Hugo. England became too hot for him, and he died of yellow fever in Central America. Henry's own father, the middle brother, died young, so he is the last of the Baskervilles. I had a wire to say that he arrived at Southampton this morning, and I'm on my way to meet him. Mr. Holmes, what am I to do?
I suggest you call here at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning and bring Sir Henry with you.
I'll do that, Mr. Holmes.
Just one more question. You say that just before Sir Charles Baskerville's death, several people saw this apparition on the moor?
Yes.
Did anyone see it afterwards?
Not that I've heard.
Thank you, Dr. Mortimer.
Well, good day, Mr. Holmes, and good day to you, Dr. Watson.
Good day.
I'm very much obliged to meet you.
The next morning, our clients were punctual. As the clock struck 10, Dr. Mortimer was shown up, followed by the young baronet, a man of about 30, sturdily built with the weather-beaten appearance of one who spent most of his time in the open air.
This is Sir Henry Baskerville.
How do you do, Mr. Holmes?
My colleague, Dr. Watson.
It's very nice
Yes.
to meet you, yes, yes.
You know, the strange thing is, if my friend here hadn't proposed coming around to you this morning, I'd have come on my own.
Why?
This letter, if you can call it a letter, reached me by the first post.
Sir Henry Baskerville, Northumberland Hotel, Charing Cross. Who knew you were going to stay there?
No one. We only decided after I met Dr. Mortimer.
But presumably he was already staying there?
No, sir. I've been staying with a friend. There was no possible indication that we intended to stay at that hotel.
Someone seems to be deeply interested in your movements. May I read this letter?
Please do. As you'll see, it's only a single sentence.
I notice it's made up of printed words pasted onto a sheet of foolscap. As you value your life or your reason, keep away from the moor. The word moor is written in ink. It's the only one. Probably because it could not be found in print.
Well, perhaps you'll tell me what in the thunder is the meaning of that.
Any watermarks, I wonder? No, I don't see any. Now tell me, Sir Henry, has anything else of interest happened to you since you've been in London?
Well, no. No, I don't think so.
You've not observed anyone following you or watching you?
I seem to have walked right into the thick of a dime novel. Now, why in thunder should anyone follow me or watch me?
We're coming to that. You've nothing else to report to us?
Well, no. Well, unless you think it's worth reporting that I've lost one of my boots.
Have you indeed?
Yes, I put them both outside my door last night, and there was only one there this morning. I couldn't get any sense out of the fellow who cleans them.
It seems a singularly useless thing to steal.
I told him it'd be bound to turn up again.
Now, look, gentlemen, it seems to me that I've spoken quite enough of the little I know. It's time you kept your promise and told me what we're all driving at here.
I quite agree. Dr. Mortimer, will you be good enough to tell Sir Henry your story as you told it to us?
By all means. It begins, Sir Henry, with this manuscript, which has been in the possession of your family.
Well, I seem to have come into an inheritance with a vengeance. Of course, I've heard the Hound since I was in the nursery, but I never thought of taking the story seriously. But as to my uncle's death, I can't get it clear yet. You don't seem to have made up your minds whether it's a case for a policeman or a clergyman.
Precisely. The point we have to decide now, though, Sir Henry, is whether or not it's advisable for you to go to Baskerville Hall.
Why shouldn't I?
Well, there seems to be danger.
You mean danger from the family fiend or danger from human beings?
That's what we have to find out.
Well, whichever it is, my answer is fixed. There is no devil in the fire, Mr. Holmes, and there's no man on earth who can stop me going to the home of my own people. And you can take that as my final answer.
Bravo!
Now, look, Mr. Holmes, I'd rather like a quiet hour to myself to think about all this.
Of course.
I'll go back to my hotel. Look, why don't you and Dr. Watson come and lunch with us there at 2 o'clock?
Oh, thank you. Is that convenient to you, Watson?
Perfectly.
Then you may expect us. Shall I have a cab called?
No. I prefer to walk. If you'll join me, Dr. Mortimer?
With pleasure.
Well, then, we will meet again at 2. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Yes. Well, he seems a good enough chap.
Quick, Watson. While I get my frock coat, watch at the window. See which way they go.
Do you mean that...
Of course. Isn't it clear there are people at the tails? We must shadow them and see what happens. Careful, Watson. They've stopped to look at the shop window. We'd better do the same. No, wait. Look at that hansom cab. It's stopped as well. It's following them. That's our man.
In the cab?
Yes, let's get a look at him. Oh, curses. He's seen us.
Drive on.
He's shouting to his cabby.
Oh, let's run after them.
No, it's useless. They've too good a start. Watson, if you're an honest man, you can record this and set it against my successes.
Who was the man?
I have no idea. Did you see his face?
All I saw was a big black beard.
Probably a false one to conceal his true features. He's at a disadvantage, though.
You mean he's put himself in the power of the cabman?
Exactly.
What a pity we didn't get the number.
My dear Watson, clumsy as I had been, surely you don't imagine I neglected to get that. 2704. That's our man. We must find out by wire the identity of the cabman and arrange to question him.
Well, what about Sir Henry and Dr. Mortimer?
Oh, there's no point in following them now. Come, Watson, to the nearest telegraph office, and then we can drop into one of those Barn Street picture galleries.
Ah, Mr. Holmes.
Sir Henry, did you know you were followed from my rooms this morning?
Followed? By whom?
Well, whoever he was, he informed the cabman that his name was Sherlock Holmes. And, Dr. Mortimer, have you among your acquaintances on Dartmoor any man with a black full beard?
Let me see. Yes, Barrymore, Sir Charles's butler. He has just such a beard.
Who was this Barrymore?
Oh, his family have looked after the hall for 4 generations now.
Did Barrymore profit at all by Sir Charles's will, Sir Henry?
Yes. He and his wife had £500 each.
Ah. Did they know it was coming to them?
Oh, yes. Sir Charles was very fond of talking about his will.
Now, that is very interesting.
I hope you don't suspect everyone who received a legacy from Sir Charles. I myself was left £1,000.
Indeed. Anyone else?
There were a number of small bequests to individuals and to some charities. The residual all went to Sir Henry here.
Sir Henry, how much was the residual?
£740,000.
What?
I had no idea that so gigantic a sum was involved. It's a stake for which a man might well play a desperate game. One more question, Dr. Mortimer. If anything happened to our young friend here, you'll forgive the unpleasant hypothesis. Who would inherit the estate?
Well, that would be some distant cousins named the Desmonds. There's James Desmond, who's an elderly clergyman in Westmoreland.
I see. Tell me, Sir Henry, have the mysterious events of the last few hours caused you to change your mind about visiting Baskerville Hall?
Mr. Holmes, they have just made me all the more determined to go down there for the very first moment that I can.
Then I only make one provision. You certainly must not go alone.
Dr. Mortimer is going with me.
Dr. Mortimer has his practice to attend to, and his house is miles away from yours. With all the goodwill in the world, he may not be able to help you. No, Sir Henry, you must take somebody with you. A trusty man who will always be by your side.
Could you possibly come yourself, Mr. Holmes?
If matters come to a crisis, I should endeavor to be present in person, but my extensive practice and the constant appeals that reach me make it impossible for me to be away indefinitely.
Oh, whom then would you recommend?
If my friend Dr. Watson would take it, There's no man better worth having at your side when you're in a tight place. No man can say so more confidently than I.
Oh, Holmes.
Well, now, that's real kind of you, Dr. Watson, but if you'll come down to Baskerville Hall and see me through, I'll never forget it.
I'll come with pleasure. I don't know how I could employ my time better.
Excellent. Now, Watson, you will report very carefully to me. When the crisis comes, as it will do, I will direct you how to act.
Yes?
Could you start by Saturday?
Does that suit Dr. Watson?
Yes.
Then on Saturday, unless you hear to the contrary, we shall meet at the 10:30 train from Paddington.
As the train sped out of Paddington, I looked back at the tall, austere figure of Holmes gazing after us. A pleasant journey it was. Within a few hours, the brown earth had become ruddy. The bricks changed to granite, and then over the green squares of the fields and the low curve of a wood, there rose in the distance a gray, melancholy hill with a strange, jagged summit.
There you are, Sir Henry. There's your first view of the moor.
Dartmoor. You know, I've been over a good part of the world, but I've never had a moment to compare with this.
This is your homecoming.
Yes, but it's more than that. This is where the men of my blood have lived for centuries, up on those moors. And up there, too, there's something that has haunted them and driven them to their deaths. I know one thing, gentlemen. Whatever it is that lurks up there, whether it's man or fiend, it's not going to drive me away. I'm going to face it, and I'm going to beat it.
We soon found ourselves going across the moor to Baskerville Hall with Perkins, the groom, driving the wagonette.
Wonderful country, isn't it, Doctor?
Yes, very beautiful. There's autumn in the air, though.
What's this?
What?
What's the matter?
Look, up there on the skyline. A man on horseback?
With a rifle.
What is this, Perkins?
There's a convict escaped from Princeton, sir.
Oh?
He's been out there 3 days now. The warders watch every road, but there's no sight of him yet. The farmers about here don't like it, sir, and that's a fact.
Who is he, then?
It's Selden, the Notting Hill murderer.
And he's out there somewhere, hiding in a burrow like a wild beast. It's all this moor needs, gentlemen. Maybe it's my imagination, but it's getting mighty cold.
Welcome, Sir Henry. Welcome to Baskerville Hall.
Thank you. You are Barrymore, I take it.
I am, Sir Henry.
I see. Well, Dr. Mortimer, will you stay for dinner?
Oh, no, thank you. If you don't mind, my wife will be expecting me. I'd stay to show you over the house, but Barrymore will be a better guide than I.
Very well. Perkins,
Sir.
take Dr. Mortimer home, will you? And thank you, Doctor, for all the help that you've given me. Oh, Doctor, it's just as I imagined. Rafters, oak paneling, stag's heads, coats of arms, the very picture of an old family home, and my people have lived here for 500 years.
Excuse me, Sir Henry.
Yes, Barrymore.
My wife and I will be happy to stay with you until you've made fresh arrangements.
Fresh arrangements? You mean your wife and you mean to leave?
Only when it's quite convenient to you, sir.
Well, I'd be sorry to start my life here by breaking an old family connection.
I feel that too, sir. So does my wife.
Then what's the trouble?
To tell the truth, sir, we were both very much attached to Sir Charles, and his death gave us a shock and made all these surroundings very painful to us. I'm afraid we could never be easy in our minds at Baskerville Hall again.
What do you plan to do?
Well, I have no doubt, sir, we shall succeed in establishing ourselves in some business. Sir Charles's generosity has given us the means to do it.
I see.
And now, sir, perhaps I'd better show you to your room.
Ah, good morning, Dr. Watson.
Oh, Morning, Sir Henry. Did you happen to hear someone sobbing in the night?
Well, that's curious. I had thought it was all just a dream.
I heard it quite distinctly. A woman sobbing.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Ah, Barrymore, it's a very good breakfast. Tell me, we both thought we heard the sound of a woman crying in the night. Do you know anything about that?
No, Sir Henry. There are only 2 women here at night. One is the scullery maid who sleeps in the west wing, and the other is my wife. It certainly wasn't her. Can I bring you more coffee, sir?
No, thank you.
Very good, Sir Henry.
I don't believe him.
Why not?
I passed Mrs. Barrymore on my way downstairs. Her eyes were red and swollen. It must have been her.
Do you think it was him following me in that cab in Regent Street?
We'll soon find out.
How?
In London, after we failed to identify the bearded man following you, Holmes sent a test telegram to Barrymore with strict instructions that it was to be delivered personally to Barrymore or returned. I thought I'd walk over to the Grimpen post office and have a word with the postmaster. It'll give me something to report to Holmes. Do you feel like a walk?
No. I've got a lot of papers to attend to here. You go on your own. I'll see you back here for lunch.
I don't see what your query is, sir. My boy gave the telegram to Mrs. Barrymore.
Why not to Mr. Barrymore himself, as instructed?
He was up in the loft at the time.
Did anyone see him?
Well, surely his wife ought to know where he is. He's got the telegram, didn't he? If there's any mistake, it's for Mr. Barrymore to complain.
Yes.
Excuse me, but isn't this Dr. Watson?
Yes, but I don't think I know...
Allow me to introduce myself. Stapleton of Merripit House.
Oh, Stapleton. How do you do, sir?
I hope Sir Henry is none the worse for his journey.
He's very well, thank you.
Excellent. You going back to Baskerville Hall now, Doctor?
Well, that was my intention.
Then our roads lie together. Just over there, you can see the plume of smoke. From here, that's where I live, Merripit House. It's only a moderate walk from the moor path. If you should have a few minutes to spare, I should appreciate the honor of introducing you to my sister.
I should be delighted.
Oh, come along then. It's a wonderful place, the moor. You never tire of it. You can't think what secrets it contains.
You know it well, then.
I've been here for 2 years. Residents call me a newcomer, but my tastes led me to explore every part of the country road. As you can see, I'm a naturalist. Some of the locals laugh at my butterfly net and this tin I always carry with me.
You're a lepidopterist?
I've only recently come here, but there are a few who know the moor better than I do.
Is it so hard to know?
Very hard. For instance, you see that great plain to the north with the hills behind it? That is the Great Grimpen Mire. A false step there means death to man or beast. It's dangerous to cross even in the dry seasons, but after all these autumn rains, it's an awful place. Yet I can find my way to the very heart of it and come back alive.
Well, why should you want to go to that dreadful place?
You see those hills beyond? They're really islands cut off on all sides by the mire, which has crawled round them in the course of years.
I see, yes.
That is where the rare plants and butterflies are. There are 1 or 2 paths that an active man can take.
Well, I'll try my luck someday.
For mercy's sake, put such an idea out of your mind. You wouldn't have a chance. It's only by remembering very complex landmarks that even I can do it.
Oh. Good heavens! What was that?
A queer place, the moor.
But what is it, man?
The peasants say it's the Hound of the Baskervilles calling for its prey.
It's the weirdest thing I ever heard in my life. Even in India,
The
nothing
moor
so...
is rather an uncanny place altogether. Look at that hillside yonder. What do you make of those circular rings of stone?
What are they? Sheep pens?
No. They're the homes of our worthy ancestors.
Oh, it's quite a town. When was it inhabited?
Neolithic man. No date. Oh, excuse me. Do you see that butterfly? It's a cyclopedes. Very rare. You scarcely ever see them in autumn. I must try and get it.
I say, Mr. Stapleton, do be careful. You tell me how dangerous it is. I suppose he knows what he's doing.
Good sir,
Oh, good heavens!
go back. Go straight back to London.
Why should I go back?
I can't explain, but please do as I ask you. Go back and never set foot on the moor again.
But I've only just come.
Hush, my brother's coming back. Not a word of what I said. Would you mind getting me that orchid among the mare's tails yonder? We're very rich in orchids on the moor. It's getting rather late for them.
Beryl, you've introduced yourselves, I see.
Yes, I was telling Sir Henry that the orchids are nearly over.
That's not Sir Henry Baskerville.
No, only a humble commoner. I'm his friend, Dr. Watson.
Then we've been talking at cross purposes.
Why? You had not very much time for talk.
I'd talk if his Dr. Watson was a resident instead of just a visitor. It cannot much matter to him whether it is early or late for orchids. Well, never mind. But do, please come on and see Mary Pitalis, Doctor.
No, really, thank you. I promised Sir Henry
It
that I'd
must be a pleasure deferred. Au revoir, Dr. Watson.
Goodbye, sir.
Come, Beryl.
My dear Holmes, I waited until tonight to finish this letter to you as I didn't wish to arouse Sir Henry's curiosity or alarm. I mentioned to him that I met the Stapletons, but not that she had whispered to me this strange warning, thinking that I was Sir Henry myself. Stapleton, I learned, was a schoolmaster in the north whose school was running well till an epidemic killed 3 of the boys, and they never recovered from the blow. Sir Henry is in excellent spirits. We've been sitting over the fire and talking about the portraits of the Baskerville ancestors looking down upon us. It's now nearly 2 o'clock in the morning. Who's that? Ah, Sir Henry. Anything wrong?
I'm not sure. There was a creaking in the passage outside. I saw a candle in a shadow.
Let's go see.
There you are. There's a light in one of those rooms. Who is it?
Barrymore.
What's he doing?
He seems to be signaling with a candle and staring out into the moor. And now, Holmes, little more consequence to report this morning. No more nocturnal wanderings. And today, Mr. Stapleton and his handsome sister are joining us for luncheon with Dr. Mortimer. Monday evening. Now, Holmes, a new complication. As if we had not enough. Sir Henry has shown an obvious attachment to Mr. Stapleton's sister. This was clear enough at our first luncheon party, which I wrote to you earlier, and equally clear is Mr. Stapleton's hostility. Now the thing has moved further, a meeting on the moors between Sir Henry and the sister interrupted with angry words by the jealous Mr. Stapleton. Otherwise nothing. We listen every night for Barrymore to repeat his strange behavior. Yes?
Watson, he's come to this room again. I'm going to challenge him. Bring your revolver.
Very well.
Ready? Now. Barrymore, what are you doing here?
Nothing, sir.
He must have been holding that candle as a signal. Give it to me now, Barrymore.
It's not a signal, sir.
Give me that candle. Now, let us see if there's any answer. There it is.
By Jove, yes!
You rascal, you still deny it's a signal?
It's my business, not yours.
Then by thunder, you'll leave my employment in the morning. Come, Watson, bring your revolver. I'm going to take that man out there, whoever he may be. This is a bitter wind, Watson. Bitter. Now, where was that answering light, do you think?
Further up, I feel sure, by the Neolithic hot circle.
Good heavens! What's that, Watson?
I don't know. I heard it once before. It's a sound they have on the moor.
Watson, it was the cry of a hound. The Hound of the Baskervilles. Now, Barrymore, to whom were you signaling? Dr. Watson and I go out into the moor and find some trophy remnants of food and shelter. Who left them there?
Don't ask me, Sir Henry. Don't ask me. I give you my word, sir. It's not my secret.
My thunder, Barrymore, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Your family has lived with mine under this roof for over 100 years, and here I find you deep in some plot against me.
No, no, sir, not against you.
Miss Barrymore, why did you come here?
Oh, let me speak. It's my doing, Sir Henry. He's done nothing except for my sake. I asked him to do it.
Well, speak out then. What does it mean?
My brother is starving out there on the moor.
Your brother?
We can't let him perish at our very gate, sir. Our light is a signal that we have food for him.
Then your brother is...
The escaped convict, sir. Selden, the criminal.
What?
Is this true?
It's true, sir. Every word of it.
Well, I can't blame you for standing by your own wife, but you must see the man's a public danger.
In a very few days, sir, he'll be on his way to South America. If he can only lie quiet till the ship's ready for him, I beg you not to let the police know he's still on the moor.
What do you say, Watson?
Well, if he was safely out of the country, it would relieve the taxpayer of a burden.
Well, that's true, I suppose. I guess we're aiding and abetting a felony.
Yes, I'm afraid so.
All the same, I don't feel now I can give the man up. That's an end to it.
Oh, sir.
Sir Henry,
Yes, what is it now?
you've been so kind to us, sir, that I should like to do the best I can in return. I know something.
What do you mean?
Well, it's about Sir Charles's death, sir.
What?
Do you know how he died?
No, sir, I don't know that.
Well, what then?
I know why he was at the gate.
Why?
To meet a woman.
A woman?
Yes, sir.
Well, what was her name?
Well, I can't give you that, sir, but I can give you her initials. They were L.L.
And how do you know that?
Well, sir, your uncle had a letter that morning. It was from Coombe Tracy and addressed in a woman's hand.
Well?
Well, I thought no more about it, sir, but the other day my wife was cleaning out Sir Charles's study, and she found the ashes of a burned letter in the back of the grate. Most of it was charred to pieces, but there was just one slip you could still read.
What did it say?
It said, please, as you are a gentleman, burn this letter and be at the gate by 10 o'clock. And the initials were L.L.
And you've no idea who this L.L. is?
No, sir.
Very good. Barrymore, you and your wife may go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, and bless you, sir.
L.
Good day, Doctor.
Ah, Dr. Mortimer. Hello.
Been taking a walk?
Yes, I've been walking around the Black Core.
Oh, well, let me give you a lift home then.
Oh, well, thank you.
Up you go. I'm very upset, Dr. Watson. My spaniel has disappeared.
Oh,
Yes, the little curly-haired chap wandered off into the moor, never came back.
oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Any news of Sherlock Holmes?
He acknowledges my reports, but he doesn't say much. Mortimer, do you know if there's a woman living around here with the initials L.L.?
Not that I know of. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, of course there is. Laura Lyons of Coombe Tracy.
Who is she?
Married some artist fellow called Lyons who came sketching on the moors. He walked out on her, and now the poor girl hasn't a penny.
How does she live?
Well, several of us have helped her. The Stapletons, Sir Charles, so have I. She's managed to start a little typewriting business. Why do you ask?
Oh, just curiosity. Mrs. Lyons.
I don't think we've met, Mr.
Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
How do you do? It is about the late Sir Charles Baskerville that I've come to see you.
And what can I tell you about him?
You knew him, didn't you?
Yes, I owe a great deal to his kindness.
Did you correspond with him?
What is the object of this interrogation?
To avoid a public scandal.
Yes, I did write to Sir Charles to acknowledge his generosity.
How did he know enough about your affairs to be able to help you?
From my friend, Mr. Stapleton.
Did you ever write to Sir Charles asking him to meet you?
Really, sir? Certainly not.
Not on the very day of Sir Charles's death.
No, I don't think so.
Surely your memory deceives you. Didn't you write, please burn this letter and be at the gate by 10 o'clock?
Yes, I believe that I could, if I could see him, I could gain his help.
Well, what happened when you got there?
I never went.
Mrs. Lyons!
I swear it all, and I hold sacred. Something intervened to prevent my going.
What?
You probably know that I made a rash marriage, and I've had reason to regret it.
Yes, I've heard something of the kind.
My husband has made my life one incessant persecution.
Oh, dear.
I'd learned that there is a possibility of regaining my freedom if certain expenses could be met. I thought if Sir Charles heard the story from my own lips, he might help me.
Then why didn't you go?
Because I received help in the interval from another source.
Then why didn't you write to Sir Charles and explain what was...
I was going to do that. Then the next morning, I heard that he had died.
Oh, Watson, I thought you got lost on the moors. Come along. Your lunch is waiting for you.
Oh, thank you. No, I didn't get lost. I was driving back from Mrs. Lyons, and Mortimer stopped me and said he'd forgotten to tell me that he observed a boy go up every day toward those stone huts on the hill. Regular as clockwork.
That's odd. Oh, Barrymore, Dr. Watson is here now.
Very good, sir.
Oh, and Barrymore, do you know anything about a boy going up on the moors? Is he anything to do with that precious relation of yours?
No, sir. I think he takes food to that other man.
What other man?
I don't know, sir. Selden says he's not a convict. He says he's living in one of those stone huts, and the boy brings him up food from one of the villages.
But he doesn't know who he is.
No, sir. And he doesn't like it. Neither do we, sir, I can tell you. Waiting for something, he seems to be. There's foul play somewhere, sir. I'll swear it.
Who on earth could it be?
Do you think that it's the same fellow who was following you about in London?
Ah!
I'd better send a report by telegraph. No, I'll do better than that. I'll drop onto the moor this evening.
I'll come with you.
No, I can't permit it.
Huh?
That was Holmes's last word to me. Keep him off the moor, especially after dark. And it'll be close to dark by the time I get there.
But my dear fellow...
Don't worry. I'll take my revolver. I can look after myself. Do you realize, Sir Henry, this fellow may be the key to the whole mystery? He gave us the slip in Regency Street thanks to his handsome cab. Well, he won't do it up there. Ha! Who knows? For once, I may succeed even where Holmes has failed. With tingling nerves, I sat in the dark recesses of the hut and waited for the coming of its tenant. Then, at last, I heard it. At last. Last!
It's a lovely evening, Watson. I really think you'll be more comfortable outside than in.
Holmes! Holmes!
And please be careful with that revolver.
Oh, Holmes, I was never more glad to see anyone in my life. How did you know I was here?
Watson, if you seriously desire to surprise me, you must change your tobacconist.
Oh, my cigarettes.
Yes, you threw it down there, Doctor. That supreme moment when you charged into the empty hut, thinking I was here.
Tell me how in the name of thunder did you get here? I thought you were in Baker Street working on that case of blackmailing.
That was what I wished you to think.
I've been able to see Laura Lyons of Coombe Tracy.
Well done. We've obviously been working on parallel lines. What did you learn?
Well, she made an appointment with Sir Charles at the gate. She admits that. She wanted money to help her divorce, but she never went. Something happened to make her change her mind, but she wouldn't tell me what. She also said that she first got in touch with Sir Charles through Stapleton.
Ah, now that is important. It bridges the gap. You're aware, I suppose, that there's a close intimacy between the lady and Stapleton?
No, I didn't know that.
There's no doubt about it. Now, this puts a very powerful weapon into our hands. If I can only use it to detach Stapleton's wife.
His wife?
Why, yes. The lady who passes for his sister is his wife.
Good heavens! Why the elaborate deception?
Because he foresaw that she'd be more used to him as a free woman.
Then he is our enemy? Was it he who dogged us in London?
So I read the riddle.
Stapleton, and the warning letter. And that must have come from her.
Exactly.
But Holmes, how do you know this woman is his wife?
Because he so far forgot himself as to give you a true piece of autobiography when he first met you. There's no one easier to trace than a schoolmaster.
Then what's Stapleton after?
It is murder, Watson. Refined, cold-blooded, deliberate murder.
Oh, my heavens! What's that? Where is it? The Hound!
The great heavens! If we're too late... Come, Watson, come! Do you hear that? He's beaten us, Watson.
Oh, no, surely not.
Fool that I was to hold my hand. And you, Watson, see what becomes of abandoning your charge. By heavens, if the worst has happened, we'll avenge him. Come quickly, let's find him.
Yes. Yes, it's Sir Henry, the poor devil.
Do you remember? That's the suit he wore when he first came to our rooms in Baker Street.
Yes, indeed. His skull is crushed. Oh, the brute. Holmes, I shall never forgive myself.
I'm more to blame than you, Watson. But how could I know that he risked his life on the moor in the face of all my warnings?
Well, this brute of a hound that drove him to death, he may be lurking among the rocks at this very moment. And where's Stapleton? He shall answer for this.
He shall. I'll see to that.
The light's on in his cottage. Why don't we go and seize him at once?
No, my case is not complete. One false move and he may escape again. All we can do now is to perform the last offices for our poor friend here. Come on, Watson. Help me to turn him over onto his back, and then we can...
Good heavens! Holmes, are you mad?
Watson, look! This man has a beard.
A beard?
It's not the baronet at all. Why, it's my neighbor, the convict.
Oh, of course. Now I see it. Sir Henry gave Barrymore some of these suits, and Barrymore must have passed them on to Selden.
Then clothes have been the poor fellow's death. Obviously, the Hound was laid on from some article of Sir Henry's.
The boot that was stolen at the hotel.
Probably. Watson, what's this? Yes, Stapleton himself, by all that's wonderful and audacious. Careful now, not a word to show your suspicion.
Why, Dr. Watson, is that you? Is it not? Well, dear me, what's this? Somebody's hurt? Not... Don't tell me, it's our friend Sir Henry. What a terrible... Oh, who is this?
Selden, the man who escaped from Princeton.
Oh, dear me, but how?
He appears to have broken his neck by falling over these rocks. My friend and I were strolling on the moor, and we heard a cry.
So did I. That's what brought me out. I was uneasy about Sir Henry.
Why about Sir Henry in particular?
Because I had suggested he should come over.
I see.
What's your theory of this poor fellow's death, Mr. Holmes?
You are quick at identification.
We've been expecting you in these parts since Dr. Watson came down. You're in time to see a tragedy.
Yes, indeed. I shall take an unpleasant remembrance back with me to London tomorrow.
Oh, you'll return tomorrow?
That is my intention.
And I must return to my sister. She'll be nervous there on her own. Good night, then, Mr. Holmes.
Goodbye, sir.
Good night, Dr. Watson.
What nerve the fellow has. We're at close grips at last.
I'm sorry he's seen you.
So was I at first, but there was no getting out of it.
How will it affect him, do you think?
It may make him more cautious, or it may drive him to desperate measures. Like most clever criminals, he may be too confident and imagine he's completely deceived us.
What will you do now? Come out to the hall?
I see no reason for further concealment. But one last word, Watson. Say nothing of the Hound to Sir Henry. Let him think Selden's death was what Stapleton was led to believe.
When we arrived, I had the unpleasant task of breaking the news of Selden's death to the Barrymores. Sir Henry raised his eyebrows when he found that Holmes had no luggage and no explanation. But between us, we soon supplied his wants and sat down to a belated supper.
Sir Henry, I don't suppose you appreciate that we've been worrying over you under the impression that you'd broken your neck.
What's that?
This poor wretch was dressed in your clothes. I fear your servant who gave them to him may be in trouble with the police.
Oh, no, I don't think so. There was no mark on them as far as I know.
That's lucky for him.
How about the case? If you can muzzle that hound and put him on a chain, I'll be ready to swear that you're the greatest detective of all time.
I think I can do it, if you'll give me your help.
I'll do whatever you tell me.
Very good. I shall ask you to do it blindly, without asking the reason.
Just as you like.
If you'll do this, I think the chances are that...
What's the matter, Holmes?
Oh, I was admiring your family portraits. They are all family portraits, I presume?
Everyone. Barrymore has been coaching me on them.
Who's this gentleman with the black velvet and the lace?
Ah, that's the cause of all the mischief. The wicked Hugo who started the Hound of the Baskervilles. We're not likely to forget him.
Dear me. He seems a quiet, meek-mannered man. But I dare say there was a lurking devil in his eyes.
I think we could manage another bottle of hock, don't you?
Oh, thank you.
I'll go fetch it for myself. I won't bother Barrymore tonight. His wife is so upset with the news about Selden.
Watson. The portrait of Hugo Baskerville. Look at it carefully. Is it like anyone you know? Here, let me cup my hands around his face. There.
Well, when you're looking at it in a certain light... Good heavens! It's Stapleton!
Ah.
It might be his portrait.
Yes, it's an interesting example of a throwback, both physical and spiritual.
The fellow is a Baskerville,
Really?
with designs on the succession.
Yes, we have him, Watson. We have him.
Here we are. You look like a general planning a battle with his chief of staff.
That's exactly the situation.
Well, what are my orders?
I understand that tomorrow night you are engaged to dine with the Stapletons?
Yes, they're very hospitable people. I hope you'll come too.
Oh, I'm afraid Watson and I must go to London.
To London? Tomorrow?
My dear fellow, you must trust me implicitly. Tell your friends that we should have been happy to come with you, but that urgent business has called us to task. Will you do that?
Well, if you insist, Mr. Holmes.
One more direction. I want you to drive to Merripit's house, but send your trap back and let them know you intend to walk home.
What's that, Holmes?
Walk home? Alone? Across the moor?
Yes.
But that's the very thing you told me not to do.
This time you must. But whatever you do, stick to the path that leads from Merripit House to the Grimpen Road. Don't leave that path for an instant, as you value your life.
The next morning, the trap took us to the station of Tracy, but Instead of taking the train, Holmes inquired of the station master's office and was given a telegram. What do you got there, Holmes?
Capital. Listen, Watson. Wire received. Coming down was unsigned warrant. Arrive 5:40. Lestrade.
You sent for Lestrade?
Yes, he is the best of the professionals. I think we may need him.
So, we're not going to London.
No, but everything depends on Sir Henry believing that we have gone. All we have to do is keep out of the way, and I think we might well employ our time by calling on your acquaintance, Miss Laura Lyons. When she learns of the deception that Stapleton practiced on her, I think the result may be of interest.
What? What do you mean, his wife? Mr. Stapleton is not a married man.
I'm afraid you're mistaken, Mrs. Lyons.
Prove it to me. Prove it to me. And if you cannot prove it, then...
I've come prepared to do so. Here is a photograph of the couple taken in York 4 years ago.
Let me see it.
It is endorsed Mr. and Mrs. Vandeleur.
Oh, Mr. Holmes. Ask me what you like. I'll hold nothing back.
Very well. Was the sending of the letter to Sir Charles suggested to you by Stapleton?
He dictated it.
So that you could meet the legal expenses of your divorce.
Yes.
And then, after you had sent the letter, he dissuaded you from keeping the appointment?
Yes. He told me it would hurt his self-respect if anyone else found the money.
And later, after Sir Charles's death, he made you remain silent about your appointment?
He said that if I spoke, I should be suspected of murder.
Well, I think on the whole, you've had a very fortunate escape. You had him in your power, and he knew it. And yet, you are alive.
I still can't believe it.
I assure you, Mrs. Lyons, for several months you've been walking on the edge of a precipice. Now, I must wish you good morning.
Oh, there he is.
Good evening, Lestrade.
Good evening, Mr. Holmes. Good evening to you. Good evening, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, Lestrade?
Got anything good, gentlemen?
The biggest thing for years. Well, we have 2 hours before you need think of starting. I think we might employ in getting some dinner, don't you?
Suits me.
And then, Lestrade, we'll take the London fog out of your throat by giving you a breath of the pure night air of Dartmoor.
I've never been on Dartmoor.
Well, I don't suppose you'll forget your first visit.
No.
Come along. Now, I'll lead the way along the moor path.
Right.
I must ask you to walk on tiptoe and not to raise your voice. We are only about 200 yards from the house. These rocks upon the right will make an admirable screen.
We ought to wait here.
Yes, this will be our little ambush. Get into this little hollow, Lestrade. Watson, you've been inside the house. You know the lie of the land. Creep forward quietly and see what they're doing. And for heaven's sake, don't let them know that they're being watched.
All right, Holmes.
Well, Watson?
Stapleton and Sir Henry are sitting there smoking a cigar. Stapleton is doing the talking.
Where's the lady?
I didn't see her. Stapleton got up at one point and went to a small house in the corner of the orchard. He unlocked it and went in. There was a curious scuffling noise.
How long was he in there?
Only a minute or two, and then he went back and rejoined Sir Henry.
Mr. Holmes, it looks as if that fog is coming up from the mire.
I know, Lestrade. The one thing on earth I didn't bargain for.
Serious, Holmes?
Very serious indeed. It could ruin all of our plans. What's the time?
10 o'clock. Oh, come along now.
His life depends on his coming out before the fog is over that path. If he isn't out in a few minutes, the path will be covered. We shan't be able to see our hands in front of us. Why doesn't he come?
Ah, there's the front door. He's coming out.
Quiet.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
There he comes.
Shall we call to him?
No. Have your pistols ready.
Right. He stopped. He heard something.
He's looking over his shoulder to Merripit House. He's terrified.
Holmes, why don't we let him know we are here?
No. I said no. This is the moment, Watson. The supreme moment. Quiet.
The Hound. It's coming after him, but where?
Oh, this fog.
Holmes, look there. Its mouth, its eyes. The fiend's on fire.
It's something out of the devil's pit.
Help me! Oh, help!
Oh, you got him, Holmes.
Come on, both of you, come on!
That cry of pain from the Hound had blown all of our fears to the wind. If it could be wounded, it could be killed.
Help me! Oh, help! We're with you, Sir Henry!
I have never seen a man run as fast as Holmes. He outpaced both Lestrade and me. We arrived in time to see the beast spring upon its victim, hurl him to the ground, and start to tear at his throat. In the next instant, Holmes emptied 5 barrels of his revolver into the creature's flank.
It's dead, Watson. See to Sir Henry.
Ah, he's fainted. He'll recover, though. We were just in time.
Here's a flask of brandy.
Ah, thank you, Lestrade. Steady, sir. You're all right. Here, drink this easy. Easy, come. Have another. Some more.
What was it? What in heaven's name was it?
Whatever it was, it's dead. We've laid the family ghost to rest once and for all.
Look at the size of the brute.
The size of a small lion.
Even now, the mouth is on fire, and look at the eyes.
Oh, don't worry. It's phosphorus. Look, I've got it on my fingers now.
Phosphorus?
Yes, and a very cunning preparation of it. There's no smell to interfere with the animal's power of scent. Oh, Sir Henry, we owe you a deep apology. I was prepared for a hound, but not for a creature such as this.
You saved my life.
Having first endangered it.
Watson, give me another mouthful of that brandy.
Come on, here we are.
That's better. That's much better now. If you'll help me up a little.
Can you stand?
Yes. Thank you. Well, what do you propose to do now?
To leave you here. You're not fit for further adventures tonight. If you wait, one or the other of us will go back with you to the hall.
Right.
Now, we must finish our work. We have our case. We only want our man. Watson, Lestrade, come along. Every moment is important. Come along to Merripit House. As I thought, not a sign of him. He'd have heard our shots and escaped. Ah, the door is locked. Keep still. Listen. Do you hear that? Stand aside and be ready to rush in. I'm going to kick this lock in.
Oh, Mrs. Stapleton.
Oh, the poor wretch. Quick, Watson, help me untie her. Get the gag out of her mouth.
Oh, Holmes. Oh, look at that whiplash on her neck. The brute.
Here, madam, sip this brandy.
Did he Did he escape?
He cannot escape us, madam.
No, I mean Sir Henry.
Yes,
And the Hound?
dead.
Thank goodness they're gone. Oh, oh, see how he's treated me. I hate him.
Then help us. Tell us where we can find him.
There's only one place he could have fled, the old tin mine.
Where?
On an island in the heart of the mire. That's where he kept the Hound, and that's where he'll be.
But look at the fog. No one can find his way into Grimpenmire tonight.
Yes, he couldn't see the guiding wands tonight.
What do you mean?
We planted them together to mark the pathway to the mire.
I see.
Oh, if I could have plucked them out today, then you'd have him at your mercy.
Well, it's no use our going after him until this fog lifts. Lestrade, will you stay on here?
Certainly, Mr. Holmes.
Watson, we must take Sir Henry back to Baskerville Hall. Mrs. Stapleton, if the weather is cleared, we will call on you tomorrow morning.
The next morning, Mrs. Stapleton guided Holmes, Lestrade, and myself to the edge of the bog. We left her standing on the firm, peaty soil and began to follow the small wands that showed the zigzagging path through the foul quagmire. Its grip clutched at our heels as we walked, as if some malignant hand were tugging us down.
We're nearly there, Watson.
Yes, thank heaven for that. Hey, Lestrade!
Give me a good, firm London pavement every time.
Look, Watson, there. There's something in the mud just to the right there.
Leave it, Holmes.
Look out, sir.
Easy there. You'll get caught.
Look at this.
An old boot?
Why risk your life for that, sir?
Look at the maker's name, Watson.
Myers, Toronto.
Exactly. It was worth a mud bath. That's Sir Henry's missing boot. The one that was stolen from his London hotel. Stapleton must have used it to set the Hound on his track, and then thrown it away in his flight when he knew the game was up.
He got as far as here, then?
Yes, come on. Let's see what else we can learn.
But more than that, we were never destined to know. When we reached the firmer ground, we looked eagerly about us. There were many pieces of Stapleton's habitation, the chain where the animal was kept, the bones that had gnawed, the remains even of Mortimer's poor little curly-haired spaniel, and the tin of a luminous paint that had been used to make the Hound glow with fire. But of the man himself, no sign met our eyes. If the earth told a true story, then he never reached that island of refuge. Somewhere in the foul slime of Grimpenmire, this cold and cruel-hearted man is forever bedded. Towards the end of November, Sir Henry Baskerville and Dr. Mortimer were in London on the first stage of a voyage around the world to calm Sir Henry's shattered nerves. They called on us one raw and foggy afternoon, and the four of us sat and talked around a cheerful fire in our sitting room in Baker Street.
You know, Mr. Holmes, there are still one or two things about the case that puzzle me.
I shall do my best to clarify them.
Well, was Stapleton really a relative of mine?
Oh, yes, beyond all question. He was the son of Roger Baskerville, old Sir Charles's younger brother, who fled under a cloud to South America.
Ah, and Mrs. Stapleton?
She was a Costa Rican beauty by name, Beryl Garcia. He stole some money, changed his name to Vandeleur, and brought her to England with him.
And what of his knowledge of the Lepidoptera? Was that all a pretense? He seemed an expert.
No, that was the one true thing about him. The British Museum recognized him as an authority. Why, he even has a moth named after him, the Vandeleur.
Tell me, where on earth did he find that fearsome hound?
In London. He bought it from Ross and Mangles, the dealers on Fulham Road. He took it down by the North Devon line and walked it over the moor so as to get it home without exciting notice. But then one thing upset his plans. he had to decoy Sir Charles under the moor at night. But his wife refused to help him. Threats and even, I'm sorry to say, blows failed to move her. So, as we know, he laid his plot for Mrs. Laura Lyons.
But did neither of these ladies suspect anything?
Probably both did, but they were both under his influence, and his main accomplice was a dumb animal who could never give him away.
Indeed.
Then your arrival on the scene, Sir Henry, brought him to London with his wife. He dared not leave her behind.
Then she sent me that note of warning.
Yes, I knew all along that it had been sent by a woman.
How could you know that?
Do you remember when I examined that piece of notepaper for watermarks?
Yes.
In doing so, I was conscious of the scent known as white jessamine. It's very necessary for the criminal expert to be able to distinguish between the 75 perfumes.
Mr. Holmes, tell me, was Miss Stapleton in love with her husband?
She certainly feared him. She may have loved him. The two are by no means incompatible, but on the day of the crisis, she turned against him. Well now, gentlemen, may I suggest that for the rest of the evening we turn our thoughts into more pleasant channels?
Well, I should say so.
I have a box for les Huguenots. Have you heard of the Risk?
Yes.
I have a match.
You have just heard an Apples of Gold radio adaptation of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle novel, The Hound of the Baskervilles. Featured in this presentation were Kenny Bass as Dr. John Watson, Matthew Imsch as Sherlock Holmes, Perkins the groom, Barrymore the butler, and the postmaster, Harper Imsch as Sir Henry Baskerville and Jack Stapleton, Marshall Valentine as Dr. James Mortimer, Danny Webb as Inspector Lestrade, Kristen Parks as Laura Lyons and Eliza Barrymore the housekeeper, and introducing Natasha Allen as Beryl Stapleton. You can find this and all Apples of Gold recordings online at applesofgoldstudio.com, on YouTube at AOG Studio, on Facebook at Apples of Gold, or on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/applesofgoldstudio. To get involved with our cast, ask any questions, or find out any more information, send an email to applesofgoldstudio@gmail.com. Apples of Gold is directed by Danny Webb and produced by Rodney Pell. This is Rodney Pell speaking. Here is Director of Apples of Gold, Danny Webb, with his closing devotional.
I have been a Sherlock Holmes fan for many years. I love the atmosphere and intrigue, and especially the camaraderie between the master detective and his associate, Dr. John Watson. In The Hound of the Baskervilles, when recommending Watson to Sir Henry, Holmes says, "There is no man better worth having at your side when you are in a tight place. No man can say more confidently than I." In the Holmes story, The Final Problem, Watson eulogizes Holmes. He believes Holmes has fallen to his death over the Reichenbach Falls in Switzerland, locked in a deadly struggle with nemesis and criminal mastermind, Professor Moriarty. Watson said that Holmes was the best and the wisest man I have ever known. It's good to have a close friend, that one you can count on to come running when you are being chased by a demonic hound, so to speak. In the Bible, David and Jonathan come to mind as such an example. Unfortunately, it seems in these times that a close relationship is viewed as, underneath, a perversion. C.S. Lewis said, "Those who cannot conceive friendship as a substantive love, but only as a disguise or elaboration of eros, betray the fact that they never have had a friend." To this I say, amen. To have someone by your side on whom you can always depend is a gift from the Lord. Outside of my immediate family, I have two. In the story, The Final Problem, Doyle killed off his famous creation for good and all, as he felt that the Sherlock Holmes stories were distracting him from more serious literary efforts. However, pressure from fans, including Doyle's mother, and the feverish generosity of editors eager for Sherlock Holmes stories temporarily dissuaded Doyle from his plan and brought about a resurrection. The Hound of the Baskervilles was Holmes' literary return following the story The Final Problem, but set prior to the detective's demise. The Hound of the Baskervilles, besides being an outstanding piece of literature, offers insight into the author's personal life. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was an ardent, outspoken spiritualist. That is, he believed that the living could communicate with the dead and spent a good deal of his life promoting this belief. Now, I do not profess to have more than a surface understanding of the occult and have no desire to expand my knowledge. I know enough to know I want no part of it. It's anti-God, anti-Bible, and anti-holiness. Billy Sunday, an evangelist in the 1920s, said, "I know there is a devil for two reasons. First, the Bible declares it, and second, I have done business with him." Unfortunately, horoscopes, astrology, crystal balls, Ouija boards, tarot cards, and children's games like voodoo, Kabbalah, and Mystic Eye are booming businesses. These enticements, to quote Inspector Lestrade, is something out of the devil's pit. If you are involved with any of Satan's playthings, believing them to be harmless and innocent fun, I implore you to follow the exhortation given by the angels to Lot, as he and his family are exiting the city of Sodom, preceding the city's imminent destruction. Run for your life and don't look back. I was talking to a police officer about the increase in violent crimes. His comment is worth noting. He said, "Mental illness and meanness don't go well together." An ancestor of mine years ago said, "There is a thin line between mental illness and meanness." The point was that sometimes vile behavior is diagnosed as mental illness when in fact it is an expression of unadulterated evil. Conversely, wickedness may be a manifestation of a mental disease. God grant us the wisdom to know the difference. Now let me emphasize that I am a believer in, an advocate of, the field of psychiatry. It is my position that God usually works through the natural to produce the supernatural. I would encourage anyone struggling with mental issues to seek professional help. On the other hand, Satan is the prince of this world and will have his seat at the table. He had the effrontery to tempt Jesus, so why should we think that we or our loved ones are exempt from his attacks? How else do you explain the wickedness and gross immorality exhibited by some people except by demonic influence or demonic possession? Charles Manson and Jeffrey Dahmer immediately come to mind. The Bible tells us to test the spirits and see if they be of God. Just because a person or group attaches the name Christian to their assemblage doesn't make it so. In the Synoptic Gospels, there is a heartbreaking story about a man who brings his demon-possessed son to the disciples who could not help him. Upon Jesus' arrival, the father pleads with the Savior, saying, "My son, my only son, has been possessed with a devil since he was a child, and it seeks to destroy him." I will leave it to those who are interested to read this narrative in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It is another example of the wonderful grace of Jesus. Now, in any biblical account, demonic activity is always associated with immodesty and violence. When studying this story of the demon-possessed child, I wondered how this boy, under the age of 12 when possessed, got into such a predicament at such a young age. The Bible does not tell us, so any thoughts I have are merely speculation. I have wondered if the parents had let down their guard and allowed gradual exposure of seemingly harmless things and people to get a foothold and gradually overtake the lad. Erosion is always by degree. In America today, the zeitgeist, that is, the spirit of the age, seems best described as entertainment is king and pornography queen. There is an old song that goes, "Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. There's a Father up above, looking down on you with love. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see." Constant exposure to a stimulus will affect behavior. The point, parents jealously guard what your children watch and with whom they associate. Several years ago, I was talking with a fellow who made this self-aggrandizing statement: "I just get bored with pornography." He was, in effect, saying that he was above that sort of thing. Talk about being deceived. When one gets bored with a certain depth of depravity, they merely go deeper into the grimpen mire of perversion. Addiction to pornography attacks the soul. The Bible teaches that Satan is a roaring lion going about seeking whom he may devour, and the tempter lures his prey with attractive bait, viz., the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Fortunately, a Christian has a friend who sticks closer than a brother, to whom we can flee for protection. I was conversing with an individual who made this false statement as he was pontificating. "We are all children of God." He's wrong. We are all created by God, made in his image, but we are not all members of God's family. Jesus told the Pharisees, "Ye are of your father, the devil." To be a child of God, you must be born into God's family. That is, ye must be born again. You must repent of your sins and receive the Lord Jesus into your heart as Savior. Don't think that your child is ever too young for you to start sharing Jesus with them. Satan has no hesitation. Reading Bibles at bedtime is the way Mom introduced the scriptures to my brother and me when we were very young. Set godly expectations for those you love and set a godly example. Remember, if you want your kids to guzzle the booze, you guzzle the booze. If you want them to curse, you curse. If you want them to watch and listen to filth, you watch and listen to filth. However, if you want your children to pray, you pray. If you want them to desire Bible knowledge, you study the Bible. If you want them in church, you be in church. If you want them to put Jesus first, you put Jesus first. I will close with a snatch of a song by Philip Bliss to parents who may be, even now, in an intense struggle for the life and the very soul of a child. It's called "Hold the Fort." Fierce and long the battle rages, but our help is near. Onward comes our great commander, cheer, my comrades, cheer. Hold the fort, for I am coming, Jesus signals still. Wave the answer back to heaven, by thy grace we will.